Hello, Australia. Welcome to Bernardi. Thank you for joining me on this Friday night. This, as always, is the show where we identify the real agenda, we present the facts, and we're never frightened of the truth. We've got a packed show, but if you've been asleep for the past 5 weeks, I got to tell you, you haven't missed much in the world of politics. Sure, we've been in the midst of a federal election campaign. We know that the false promises have been flowing thick and fast, but frankly, it hasn't been very exciting. Now, we know in the first week, the press pack, they got in a flap over Scott Morrison being blessed with 2 beautiful and healthy daughters. And then, of course, they all got in a tizzy over Anthony Albanese not knowing his own policies or basic economic facts for that matter. But I'm still maintaining it has been boring. And to be honest, I actually don't know what the 2 major parties are campaigning on right now. It seems to be more of the same or a time for change so that we can have more of the same campaign. And it all depends on which side of the political fence you sit. People aren't even talking about politics to me, and that's usually the number 1 topic of conversation. Or should I say, maybe it's the number 2 topic after fishing. Now, politics doesn't even rate in the top 5. Now, does that mean people simply aren't paying attention, or are they yet to make up their minds? Maybe it suggests that they've already settled on their voting intent and can't be bothered anymore or will not be swayed. Now, I honestly don't know, but there is a lot of suggestion that the government is in a spot of bother with this election. And they've made themselves a big target in recent years because they've had to deal with a range of dramatic events. None, of course, have been bigger than the pandemic. It cost us all hundreds of billions of dollars in debt, the deprivation of liberty, a papers, please police state, and the abrogation of responsibility by politicians who actually hid behind bureaucrats. And while people were initially grateful for the handling of the pandemic, I said at the time, this would come back to bite those political parties who pushed the course. And that appears to be happening now, both at a state and a federal level. Now, the pushback isn't driving people from one major party to the other, but rather into the minor parties. Now, some are more of a protest vote than ideologically driven, but the right of centre voter is actually now spoiled for choice. One Nation, for example, have become an established electoral fixture where many who want to pursue a more nationalist intent are actually parking their votes. And for freedom lovers, they seem to be rather keen on the Liberal Democrats, whose policy platform is about less government and more freedom. In their words, you'll own more and be happier. Clive Palmer, he's making a giant yellow splash with an expensive media campaign, and I have to say some innovative policies. For example, his claim to cap home loan rates at 3% for 5 years, it's been dismissed as impossible, A, and economically irresponsible, B, but I have to say it's striking a chord with some voters. Now, I agree. Whilst it's superficially attractive to those worried about mortgage rates, and I don't think it's financially responsible, but I'm one of the few people who say it's certainly not impossible. I mean, when I entered adulthood, home loans were capped by the government at 13.5%. And those who were paying 13.5% thought it was a great deal because others had to pay 17, 18 or 19% rates in order to service their mortgage. Now, it was financially irresponsible at the time, but it could be done. I also make the point that none of the 3 parties that I've just mentioned have committed to the foolish net zero by 2050 target that both Liberal and Labor have. Now, that's one fertile political battleground that the Liberals actually conceded with zero benefit. And they've been attacked, of course, on the left by the non-party, known as the Teal Independents or Climate 200. Now, this is a group of mainly women, I should say, backed by the inherited fortune of Simon Holmes à Court and his pals. And basically, they're pushing climate change projects no matter who forms government. The fact that they're all running in Liberal seats suggests who they'd like to see the back of, though. There are also serious questions about their advocacy for projects that might advance the investments of their financial sponsor. It wouldn't be the first time we've seen green political advocacy for the principled reason of self-interest and personal enrichment. Now, I did invite Mr Holmes à Court onto the program this week. He disrespectfully declined, which makes me wonder why. After his various name-calling, he maintained it was because not enough people watched this show, but he boasted of appearing in forums with far fewer viewers. Maybe it was something I said. Perhaps He just isn't ready to be challenged about the party he formed, which he insists isn't a party. Maybe it's more of a collective, sort of like a commune for the green rich. Unfortunately for the country, a largely disengaged electorate might actually support some of these candidates without actually knowing how politically dangerous they can be. And then you've got the even harder left parties, like the Greens. Have you heard much from them this election? Well, I certainly haven't, and it's not because I don't like to pay attention to them, but it's led me to conclude that they don't need to say much because both the major parties are actually already doing their work for them. Just think about it. Net zero, green subsidies, more cash for the ABC, more debt, more pronouns, more genders, and less common sense. Birds of a feather, hey? You really can't pick between them. But occasionally, a shoot of hope or a spring of hope erupts from even the most unfertile soil. This week, it was in the Animal Justice Party. Don't get me wrong, they are really just a hardcore lefty front group. But it was heartening to read that they cannot control the thoughts of all of their candidates. Two of them actually resigned from the Animal Justice Party when they refused to undergo party-mandated gender training. That's right, the crime was sharing or liking news articles about transgender issues on their private Facebook pages. Linda McCarthy and Sue Clark were reprimanded by the hierarchy because some precious petals complained about the articles, one of which said trans rights should not automatically trump the rights of other groups. Seems reasonable to me. And the other was UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson stating that, quote, biological males should not be competing in female sporting events. Ooh, who thought the Animal Justice Party would be concerned? Anyway, after being ordered to issue a public apology and undergo gender training, the two refused and resigned from the party. What's all this got to do with animal justice? That's anyone's guess. It's a reminder you cannot and should not judge a party from their name. Whether they call themselves independence, teal, animal justice, or some other innocuous sounding name, if you peel back the outer skin of what's inside, you'll find a deep crimson representative of collectivism and groupthink.